Have you ever looked at your trading results and thought, maybe I'm just not cut out for this? Maybe you've spent months, even years studying charts, watching endless trading videos, learning about support and resistance, risk management, market structure, yet your account still doesn't reflect the effort you've put in. And slowly, a dangerous thought begins to creep in. Maybe profitable trading just isn't for me. But what if that thought is completely wrong? What if the truth is, you're actually much closer to profitable trading than you think? Most traders imagine profitability as some distant destination. Like there's a massive gap between where they are now and where consistently profitable traders stand. But the reality is far less dramatic. The difference between a struggling trader and a profitable one is rarely intelligence. It's rarely about discovering some magical indicator. And it's definitely not about finding the perfect strategy. In fact, many profitable traders use incredibly simple systems. The real difference often lies in a few small adjustments, subtle shifts in mindset, and habits that most traders overlook. Think about it. If you already understand the basics of trading, things like risk management, patience, and waiting for high probability setups, then the foundation is already there. You're not starting from zero. You're standing much closer to the finish line than you realize. But here's the problem. Most traders are so focused on what they don't have yet that they fail to see the progress they've already made. They compare themselves to professional traders with years of experience. They chase new strategies every month. They doubt themselves after every losing streak, and without realizing it, they keep resetting their own progress. The truth is, profitable trading rarely comes from one massive breakthrough. It usually comes from stacking small improvements over time. Small improvements in discipline, small improvements in patience, small improvements in how you handle losses. And when those improvements compound, something interesting starts to happen. Your trading begins to stabilize. Your decisions become clearer, and slowly consistency starts to appear. Not because you suddenly became a genius trader overnight, but because you finally started doing the small things right, again and again. In this video, we're going to uncover the subtle signs that show you might already be much closer to profitable trading than you think. Some of these signs are things you might be experiencing right now, without even realizing they're actually part of the progress. And once you start recognizing them, your entire perspective on trading could change. So stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time you finish watching, you might realize that the gap between you and profitable trading is far smaller than you've been led to believe. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you noticed that the way you look at the market today is completely different from how you looked at it when you first started trading? Back then, everything probably felt chaotic. Every candle looked like an opportunity. Every small movement felt like it could be the trade. And if the market moved quickly, your heart probably started racing as you rushed to jump in before missing out. Most new traders live in that phase for a while. They chase moves. They overtrade. They enter positions without a real plan, and when the trade goes against them, emotions take over. But if you've been trading for some time now, something subtle may have started to change. You're not as easily impressed by random market movements anymore. You're beginning to notice structure. You're starting to recognize when the market is messy, when conditions are unclear, when the setup simply isn't worth the risk. And sometimes, instead of jumping into a trade, you wait. You observe. You let the market move without you. Now, this might not feel like progress. In fact, many traders get frustrated during this stage because they feel like they're doing less. But here's the interesting part. Doing less is often a sign you're improving, because profitable traders don't try to catch every move. They wait for the right one. Legendary trader Paul Tudor Jones once said, "Don't focus on making money. Focus on protecting what you have." That mindset changes everything. When you begin to think this way, your goal stops being constant action. Your goal becomes selective action. You start asking different questions before entering a trade. Is this really a high probability setup? Is the risk worth it? Am I following my plan or just reacting emotionally? And this shift might seem small, but it's incredibly powerful, because the moment you stop chasing the market, you start observing it more clearly. You begin to see patterns you previously missed. You start recognizing when a setup truly aligns with your strategy. And most importantly, you begin developing patience. Now, patience might sound simple, But in trading, patience is one of the rarest skills. The market is constantly tempting you to act. Every candle invites you to participate. Every sudden move whispers, "Don't miss this." Yet the traders who eventually become profitable are often the ones who learn to say something different. They say, "I'll wait." And if you've reached the point where you're beginning to wait more, analyze more, and trade less impulsively, then you might already be developing one of the most important habits that separates struggling traders from profitable ones, even if your results don't fully show it yet, because sometimes the biggest progress in trading happens quietly. Let's talk about something every trader experiences, but very few truly learn how to handle: losses. When most people first start trading, a losing trade feels personal. You place a trade with confidence, and then the market moves against you, and suddenly it feels like everything inside you starts reacting at once. It might seem you're getting heart attack because your chest is so tight. You now start questioning your analysis. Why? A question's in your mind. You stare at the chart hoping the price will magically reverse. And sometimes, instead of accepting the loss, you hold the trade longer than you should. Or worse, you jump into another trade immediately trying to win it back. Almost every trader goes through this phase. But if you've been in the markets long enough, you may have noticed something interesting starting to happen. Losses don't shake you the same way anymore. Sure, you still don't like them. No trader enjoys taking a loss. But instead of reacting emotionally, you begin to see them differently. You start seeing them as part of the process. You close the trade, you review what happened, and then you move on. That small shift is much bigger than most traders realize, because the market is not for traders who avoid losses. It's for the ones who manage them well. Legendary trader Mark Douglas once said, "The best traders think in probabilities." And when you truly understand that idea, something changes in the way you approach every trade. You stop expecting every setup to work. You stop attaching your confidence to the outcome of a single trade. Instead, you start thinking in terms of a series of trades. One trade might lose, the next one might win, another might break even. But over time, if your edge is real and your risk is controlled, the probabilities begin to work in your favor. This is where many traders unknowingly get closer to profitability. Not because they suddenly found a perfect strategy, but because they finally stopped letting a single loss control their emotions. They begin to treat trading more like a professional process rather than a personal battle with the market. And when that happens, something powerful begins to develop. Emotional stability. You stop celebrating wins too wildly. You stop fearing losses too deeply. Your decisions become calmer, clearer, more consistent. Now, this doesn't mean you've mastered trading, but it means you're developing one of the most important psychological skills that profitable traders rely on every day: the ability to stay steady, even when the market isn't. And if you've started noticing that losses don't completely throw you off anymore, then there's a good chance you're quietly moving closer to the mindset that profitable traders operate from, even if you don't fully realize it yet. Let's be honest for a moment. At some point in your trading journey, you probably believed the problem was your strategy. Maybe you thought the reason you weren't profitable yet was because you simply hadn't found the right system. So what did you do? You searched for another one, and another. You watched videos about new indicators, tested different trading styles, jumped from scalping to day trading to swing trading. For a while, each new strategy felt exciting. It felt like you were finally discovering the missing piece. But then something familiar would happen. A few losses, a couple of bad trades, and suddenly that strategy didn't feel so special anymore. So the search continued. Another system, another indicator, another secret approach. Many traders get stuck in this cycle for years without realizing it. But if you've been trading long enough, you may have noticed something changing. You're not as interested in chasing new strategies anymore. You've probably realized that most strategies actually work under the right conditions. The real challenge isn't constantly finding something new. The real challenge is sticking to one approach long enough to truly understand it. Legendary trader Ed Seykota once said, "The elements of good trading are cutting losses, and cutting losses." Notice something interesting about that quote. He didn't say the secret to trading is discovering a magical strategy. He talked about behavior, because strategy alone is rarely the deciding factor. Two traders can use the exact same system, and one becomes profitable while the other continues to struggle. Why? Because one trader executes the strategy with discipline. The other keeps second-guessing every trade. And this is where many traders unknowingly move closer to profitability. They stop looking for constant novelty. Instead, they begin focusing on consistency. They start refining the strategy they already understand. They pay more attention to timing, to patience, to risk management. They review their trades. They study their mistakes. And slowly, something begins to happen. Their strategy stops feeling random. It starts feeling familiar. They begin recognizing patterns faster. They understand when the setup is strong and when it's not worth taking. And the more familiar a strategy becomes, the more confident your decisions start to feel. Not because you believe it will win every time, but because you trust the process behind it. So if you've reached the point where you're no longer obsessed with jumping from one strategy to another, if you're starting to focus more on mastering one approach instead of constantly replacing it, then you might already be developing one of the quiet habits that profitable traders rely on. Because in trading, success rarely comes from finding something new. It usually comes from finally committing to something long enough to truly understand it. Let me ask you something that many traders avoid thinking about. When you place a trade, what are you actually focusing on first? Is it the profit you could make? Or the money you could lose? Because in the beginning of most trading journeys, the answer is usually the same: profit. New traders often enter a trade already imagining the outcome. They picture the price moving exactly where they predicted. They imagine the green numbers appearing on their screen. They calculate how much the trade could grow if the move continues. And without realizing it, their attention becomes completely centered on the reward. But something's happened as traders gain more experience. The focus begins to shift. Instead of, how much can I make from this trade? Now it's, how much am I risking here? That one question changes everything, because the moment risk becomes your first priority, your entire approach to trading starts to evolve. You become more selective. You stop forcing trades that don't make sense. You begin positioning your stop losses with intention rather than guessing. And now, not every setup feels worth taking anymore. Those were what separates emotional from professional. Legendary trader Bruce Kovner once said, "Whenever I enter a position, I have a predetermined stop. That is the only way I can sleep." Think about that for a moment. Before he even enters a trade, he already knows where he's wrong. That level of clarity removes a huge amount of emotional pressure, because the risk is defined. The outcome is controlled. And when risk is controlled, fear starts losing its power. Now here's something many traders misunderstand. Respecting risk doesn't mean becoming afraid of trading. It means understanding that survival in the market is the foundation of everything. You don't need to win every trade. You don't need to catch every big move. You simply need to protect your capital at all costs. And once traders truly grasp this idea, their behavior begins to change. They stop increasing position sizes out of excitement. They stop holding losing trades hoping they'll come back. They stop treating trading like a gamble. Instead, they start treating it like a process of calculated decisions, trade by trade, risk by risk. And if you've started noticing that protecting your capital feels more important than chasing profits, then you might already be developing one of the core habits that nearly every profitable trader shares. Because in the long run, successful trading isn't built on aggressive wins. It's built on controlled losses and disciplined decisions that allow you to stay in the game long enough for consistency to finally appear. Let's talk about one of the most underestimated skills in trading: patience. Not the kind of patience people talk about casually, but the kind that actually determines whether a trader survives in the market or not. When most traders start, patience is almost impossible. Charts are moving, candles forming, prices fluctuating every second, and the temptation to enter the market feels constant. It feels like something is always happening. So many traders believe they need to be part of it. They sit in front of the chart thinking, maybe this is the move. Then 5 minutes later, maybe this one. And before they realize it, they've taken 3 or 4 trades that were never part of their plan. Not because of a strong setup, but because it feels uncomfortable to wait. But if you've been trading long enough, you might have started noticing something different happening inside you. You're not as eager to click the buy or sell button anymore. You're beginning to feel comfortable just watching the market, observing, letting setups develop, sometimes even letting an entire session pass without taking a trade. Now at first that can feel strange. You might even wonder if you're being too cautious. But in reality, this is one of the quiet signs of growth in trading. Because the market will always offer opportunities, but not every opportunity is worth your capital. Legendary trader Jesse Livermore once said, "The big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting." That statement goes against almost everything new traders believe. Most people think trading success comes from constant activity. More trades, more entries, more chances to win. But experienced traders understand something different. Sometimes the most profitable decision you can make is doing nothing, waiting for the right conditions, waiting for the setup that truly fits your strategy, waiting until the market aligns with your edge. And when that moment finally appears, you act with clarity instead of hesitation. Patience is powerful because it filters out the noise. It protects you from impulsive decisions. And most importantly, it allows your best trades to stand out. Now here's something interesting. Many traders only realize the value of patience after they've experienced the consequences of impatience, the rushed entries, the revenge trades. The setups they knew deep down weren't strong enough. But once those lessons settle in, a different kind of trader begins to emerge, a calmer trader, a more selective trader. And if you've reached the point where you're starting to wait more than you used to, if you're becoming comfortable letting trades go instead of forcing them, then you might already be developing a trait that separates disciplined traders from the crowd. Because in trading, patience isn't just a skill. It's often the difference between reacting to the market and truly understanding it. There's a stage in trading that many people don't talk about enough, and it has nothing to do with indicators, strategies, or chart patterns. It has everything to do with self-awareness. When most traders begin their journey, they believe the market is the problem. If a trade fails, they blame the strategy. If they lose money, they assume the setup didn't work. If their account drops, they start searching for a new system. Everything seems external, but something interesting happens as traders gain more experience. The focus slowly shifts inward. Instead of immediately blaming the market, you ask, "Did I follow my plan? Was that trade actually part of my strategy? Or was I trading emotionally?" That moment, when you begin questioning your own decisions, is a powerful turning point in trading. Because the truth is, the market is not something you can control. Price will move however it wants. News will appear unexpectedly. Volatility will change without warning. But there is one thing you can control: your behavior. Legendary trader Van K. Tharp once said, "The most important element in trading is you." And once that idea truly sinks in, trading begins to feel very different. You start noticing patterns in your own behavior. Maybe you realize you tend to overtrade after a winning streak, or you notice that you become impatient after sitting out for too long. Maybe you catch yourself hesitating on good setups because of a previous loss. These observations might seem uncomfortable at first, but they are incredibly valuable, because awareness is the first step toward improvement. When you become aware of your tendencies, you can start correcting them. You can pause before making impulsive decisions. You can step away from the screen when emotions begin rising. You can review your trades with honesty instead of denial, and slowly start that your behavior becomes more controlled, more intentional, more disciplined. Now here's something many traders misunderstand. Self-awareness doesn't mean you'll stop making mistakes. Every trader still makes them, even professionals. But the difference is that aware traders learn faster from their mistakes. They recognize patterns in their behavior. They adjust, they refine, and over time those adjustments compound into better decision-making. So if you've started noticing your own habits more clearly, if you catch yourself questioning your actions before placing a trade, if you're becoming more honest about what you did right and what you did wrong, then you might already be developing one of the most important skills in trading. Because the moment a trader begins understanding themselves, they start gaining control over the one factor that influences every trade they take: their decisions. There's a quiet moment in every trader's journey that often goes unnoticed. It doesn't come with a huge winning trade. It doesn't come with a sudden spike in your account balance. Instead, it shows up in something much more subtle. You begin to trust the process. Early in trading, everything feels uncertain. Every trade feels like a test. You place a position and immediately start watching every candle, every small movement, wondering if you made the right decision. If the trade goes slightly against you, doubt appears. If the market hesitates, you feel the urge to close the trade early. And if you experience a few losses in a row, it can feel like everything is falling apart. But as traders gain experience, something begins to change. They stop expecting instant validation from every trade. They understand that one trade doesn't define their skill. They realize that success in trading isn't measured by a single outcome, but by how well they execute their process over time. Legendary trader Ray Dalio once said, "He who lives by the crystal ball will eat shattered glass." In other words, trying to predict every single market move perfectly is a losing game. No trader can control the outcome of every trade, but what you can control is how consistently you follow your process. You can control your risk. You can control your discipline. You can control whether you stick to your plan or abandon it the moment emotions appear. And when traders begin focusing on those things instead of chasing perfect predictions, something powerful happens. They become less reactive. They stop obsessing over every candle. They allow their strategy to play out over time. And with that shift, confidence starts growing in a healthier way. Not the kind of confidence that comes from a lucky win, but the kind that comes from knowing you executed your plan exactly the way you intended. Win or lose. Now this is the stage where many traders are closer to profitability than they realize. Because consistency doesn't suddenly appear overnight. It grows from repeated behaviors. Following your rules, managing your risk, waiting for the right setups, reviewing your trades honestly, and doing those things again and again and again. Eventually those habits start shaping your results. And one day you might look back and realize something surprising. You didn't suddenly become a profitable trader in one dramatic moment. You simply kept refining your process until consistency quietly appeared. And by the time that happens, the trader you've become is completely different from the one who first opened a chart. So if you've made it this far in the video, take a moment and really think about everything we talked about today. Because the truth is, many traders are much closer to profitability than they realize. Not because they suddenly discovered a secret strategy, not because they found the perfect indicator, but because over time they began changing the way they think, the way they react, and the way they approach the market. They became more patient, more disciplined, more aware of their decisions, and most importantly, they stopped chasing shortcuts. Trading is one of those journeys where progress doesn't always feel obvious. There will be periods where it feels like you're stuck, weeks where nothing seems to work, moments where you question whether all the effort is even worth it. But what many traders fail to realize is that growth in trading often happens quietly. It happens in the moments where you choose not to overtrade. It happens when you close a losing trade without letting emotions take over. It happens when you stick to your plan, even when the outcome isn't perfect. Those small decisions may not feel dramatic in the moment, but over time they build the foundation of consistency. And consistency is what eventually separates profitable traders from everyone else. So if you recognize some of the signs we discussed today, that's not something to ignore. That's progress, and progress in trading is something worth acknowledging. Now I'm curious about your experience. Which part of this video did you relate to the most? Was it learning to be more patient, handling losses differently, or finally focusing on mastering one strategy instead of chasing new ones? Let me know in the comments below. I read them, and it's always interesting to see where everyone is in their trading journey. And if you found value in this video, make sure to leave a like and share it with another trader who might need to hear this. Because sometimes the encouragement someone needs is simply realizing they're not as far behind as they think. And of course, if you want more videos like this about trading psychology, discipline, and the mindset behind consistent traders, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next video.